Looking for clarity and confidence when it comes to decision making for your business? You've come to the right place. You're now listening to the Atomic Business Coaching Podcast.
What's up, Adam?
What's up, pal? How are you?
I'm great, man. You know, I was thinking this week, I always wanted to thank you for many years ago when you helped me with something I was struggling with around money.
Okay.
I remember we sat down in one of our first conversations and you changed my entire perspective on money. And you said to me, you don't have to have a lot of money. You just have to have access to money. And that forever changed the way I think about money. It changes everything that I ever realized, because I was one of these people who worried about money all the time, right? I worried about having, and it was more, not that because I didn't have it, it was more about the way I was raised and my upbringing and all of that stuff. And, you know, I see so many people that we work with, especially in our community, that struggle with this concept of money and their relationship with money and being so negative towards money when we're trying to make money. It's like they bring negative energy into it and they're trying to make more of it, and it really just becomes more of an obstacle for them to overcome.
Mm. All right, it's a good topic. I mean, I appreciate you appreciating me. So yeah, thanks, pal.
Absolutely, man.
I've been, my entire life has been centered around understanding numbers and money and everything. You know, when I was a little kid, my dad had a business, and then he closed that business, and then he became an employee, and then he opened a business. But I was always around money, and I knew at 16, kind of what I wanted to do. And I was in economics and finance and Hofstra. And during high school, I didn't go to Hofstra. If you're listening, I took classes in Hofstra in high school. So it's been easy for me, right? Because I was just taught this is what it is. But I think most people, it's how they grew up, right? So I ask people a lot of times, what was money like for you growing up? Mm-hmm. And typically the answer, so if you're listening to this, ask yourself, like, what was money like growing up? And give yourself a second to think about that. And typically what happens is the answer to that question, you'll typically tend to go exactly that route or 180 degrees the other way. There's almost, in my experience, at least 25 years doing this, there's almost never a time when people have this middle ground.
Right.
It's like, I'm going to follow exactly how I was raised, exactly what I was taught, because that's the right way and I believe in it. And that usually is based on, it could be negative or positive, and it's usually based on people seeing a tremendous amount of success or getting caught in this really vicious cycle of dealing with money.
Right.
Right. And that's how it was growing up. That's how I am now. Or it's the other way around. Like, my parents were horrible with money and, we never had any money, and now it's the other way around. But again, that brings positives and negatives, because they get really hyper vigilant about money if their family and their experience growing up with money was negative.
Right.
It's supposed to be making it positive, but then it becomes a negative to them. It's like this thing where it's like a war. That's the best way I could put it. It's like a war for them to constantly be challenging, and like, I have to overcome this, and it's a daily battle to win the war. And it really gets paralyzing for people, where they can't make decisions. It gives them angst inside. They lose their happiness, whether they're working positively or negatively towards it. It's just because they're dealing with it versus how they grew up, or they're dealing with it the way they grew up versus how they actually are in the present moment.
Right. Well, for me, it's very true. Like, I always, when I became a physician assistant and I sought a job that had a higher paying profession, because I did not want to struggle the way my parents struggled, right? So, my dad was a Catholic high school teacher, and those guys don't make a lot of money. And any Catholic high school teachers, any Catholic school teachers out there that are listening to this by chance, you didn't make a lot of money. And we appreciate that. And we understand that. My dad worked 3 different jobs to earn the money to pay the bills and to put a roof over our head. And I think I always equated hard work with money, right? Where it necessarily did not have to be about all the hard work that he was doing, the physical labor and all that other stuff. It was the whole idea of money has to be worked for, right? And so many people start to get nervous when they get sick or they're not able to do the work, that they're not going to be able to make the money, and that creates that hypervigilance you're talking about. And I think that's something that skews a lot of the way we think about things, especially as kids. And, when you hear your parents argue over, we can't afford that, or we don't have the money for this, and this is a terrible thing, and yada, yada, like it just creates all this negative energy around it. Whereas I have learned after, talking to you and having that conversation, I'm grateful that I have the money to pay my bills. I don't complain about paying bills anymore. I used to do that all the time. Oh, I got another bill to pay. Well, if you have the money to pay the bills, it's not a big deal. Be grateful that you have the money to pay the bills so you can continue to do the thing, which brings me really to like another topic that you talk about is making money work for you, right? And how do you make money work for you? So can you share with people some of that? Because I think that's so powerful also.
Yeah, and that probably is the mindset that I've had, which is that it's a tool, right? And I've watched myself, my family, clients, just my whole life, I've watched people utilize money instead of let money use them. Right. And that's a lot of the thing that happens is people, they get money and then they can do a thing. Instead of they do a thing that gets the money. Right. And it's all the focus is on like, all right, I'm going to work so I can one day do X, so I can one day buy Y. Instead of like, I do the things that I'm doing and that happens to make me money. Right. But doing the things you're doing, people think it's spending money. It's an investment. Right. And that's really what I mean about using it as a tool. Like, you may say I'm taking a vacation. I don't care. You're a W-2 employee. You got a job. You're running a business. You're successful. You're not successful. No matter what. This works for everybody. You take a vacation and people are like, oh, I got to spend money on this vacation. And it's like, no, but you're spending time on vacation. You're investing in your peace, your serenity, your family time, your exploration, your curiosity for different cultures. And it's an investment. In my family, we have this thing. It's the map of the world. And it says the Herd family vacations, past, present, and future. And we have different pins for places we've been in the past, places we want to go, that we are going to in the present, places we'd all like to go in the future. And there's reasons behind these. Like, my son wants to go to this one place because that's the height he could reach when he was that age. It's like the South America, it's some island called Stanley. Well, he really doesn't want to go there. But now, like, my daughter wants to go to China for certain reasons. I want to go to Barcelona for certain reasons. We want to go to Poland and Ireland and England because that's where our families are from.
Right.
So it's like there's reasons behind this. So now it's like we get to do these things, not, oh my God, I have to pay for this thing. So the money, and I'm using vacations because that's a hybrid, right? It's right. I have to spend money on it. It's not the water bill. It's not the electric bill.
Right.
But it's like, I want to spend money on it, but I have to do this thing. Instead of like, I get to do this thing and then it produces more good things. And that's what I mean by a tool.
Right.
When we look at it as what can it do for us? What can it bring to us? Right. Instead of like catching up with, well, I spent this money when I shouldn't have. And now, unfortunately, I got to do things I don't want to do. And that's the negative connotation that is attached so much with money. And it becomes, how can I say this? I heard someone say something recently about this, and it becomes this, you do the thing to validate why you're doing the thing instead of just so like, I'm going on vacation so I can validate why I go to a job. I'm going to my job so I can validate why I'm going on vacation. Instead of like, no. I'm the type of guy or gal that does this thing. And I also do this thing. And money is the tool inside of those things.
Right.
And people get lost in it.
Yeah. Anytime it comes to making an investment that you need to make in yourself, you could either choose one of two ways, like you're saying. You could choose to use it as a tool that it is there for, or you can choose to see it as this thing that I have to pay for this. I have to do this, instead of seeing what you're really doing. And it's, you're making the investment back in yourself, right? We talk about this with business owners, right? When they resist hiring somebody, they often resist hiring that person because they have to pay that person. And they see that person as an expense rather than an investment. And we've talked about this in the past. And getting people over that hurdle is so difficult because of their negative relationship with money. And they see that this person now, it's another thing I have to pay for, rather than this is the thing that's going to give me my time back so that I can really focus on the things I need to do while giving the other things that I do right now to somebody else. And it really, when you don't have that mindset of money is a tool to be used to give you your life and to keep, allow you to do the things you want to do, it becomes this burden, it becomes this obstacle, and it just becomes something else that you have to pay for. And a lot of people struggle not just because of their relationship with money, but this idea of accruing debt. Like my parents growing up, they didn't use their access to money. They always paid off their debt. Mm-hmm. So they never had access to more money because they paid off their debt. Their bank account was empty because they didn't have any debt. And a lot of people see debt as a negative thing. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people see debt as negative instead of using it to work for them, right? Most millionaires have tremendous debt because they're making it work.
Yeah, all, not most, all.
Yeah, exactly.
So everybody who's in business that is successful is leveraging debt. And that's what it is. See, leveraging. You're using it as a tool again. So what most people look at debt as an obligation. It's a 4-letter word, DEBT, right? My God, I don't want to say that word. I don't have any debt. Well, there's good debt and bad debt. And that's the problem is most Americans that are employees look at debt as an obligation. Okay. And they're like, okay, I took money out that I didn't have to do something I couldn't afford. And now I must pay it back as soon as possible. So I own it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. What business owners look at and entrepreneurs look at is like, okay, someone's willing to give me money so I can invest time, money, people, whatever, into this thing that will generate more money. Okay, so they look at it as this is the pathway to make more money. So think about how most people look at their job, right? Mm-hmm. I invest my time in this place to make money.
Correct.
Well, entrepreneurs and business owners and venture capitalists, we look at money the same way. Okay, I'm investing in this debt so I can make money. You're investing in the debt. What does investment cost? Investment means you pay something back to it or you pay something into it. So most people look at investment as, I have money already. I put it in here and then I make a little bit.
Right.
What business leaders look at is the other way is I don't have money. If I get some of it and I pay a little bit towards it, I can build something huge. Now there's good debt and bad debt. Okay. Good debt makes you money. Bad debt costs you money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you go buy a car, is that good debt or bad debt?
I would say it's good debt.
That's what people would think. It's bad debt.
Okay.
Because it's a depreciating asset that doesn't bring you anything above and beyond what you put into it as return.
Right.
Okay. Is using your credit card to hire an employee good debt or bad debt?
That's good debt.
It's good debt. It seems like, what? Use my credit card to hire an employee? Like, oh my God.
Yep.
I'm going to pay 29, we're in 2024. Interest rates are crazy high. 29% borrowing that money to pay them. And not that you can do this, but paying that person on my credit card with their payroll. Well, if that employee you're paying $1,000 a week can generate you $2,000 a week, that brought you more in return. And you actually use that to pay the debt off. Where bad debt, you can't use what you have to pay it off.
Right.
And what most Americans do is the American dream. I own a home, white picket fence, 2 kids, 2.5 kids and a dog. Like that's the American dream, right?
Right.
Which is slowly dying on all of us because homes are so impossible to buy for the next generation.
Yep.
But what happens is they buy the house, and I'm just going to use round numbers, okay? They buy the house for $500,000, okay? And what do they have to do? They have to put percentage down on that home to buy it, okay? Right. At least 20%. So they put $100,000 out, the bank gives them $400,000. And they have this payment that they have to make. Let's just call it $3,000 a month with principal, interest, tax, and insurance. Okay, I have this payment, making this payment. Man, really, we should do a patio in the backyard. They have no money, though.
Right.
So what do? They go take a home equity line of credit out. Now, what's the home equity? It's the available equity in their home
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened is that house went from 500 to maybe 600,000. So there's an extra $100,000 available in there. And then they go and they buy the patio and like, but it's going to increase the property value. Okay, but they start looking at that. But here's the problem. It's only value if you sell the house.
Right.
And if you plan on living there, that is a bad debt.
Right.
That is a very bad debt. But it feels like, oh, my house made me money, so I can use that money. But now you're back in the same debt obligation system, not a system that, hey, instead of borrowing money, okay, on my home to do a patio, I borrowed that money to build something that generates me enough money to pay for the patio.
Right.
And that's the difference, is people are not using it as a tool. They're using it to purchase future income.
Mm-hmm.
So now they always have to catch up. And it's like, they never get there. So when they have that, they're like, I don't want debt. No matter what you say, I don't want to get out of that. I watched my parents go through it, or I was stupid in college and I went through it, or whatever their scenario is. And they're like, I'm never going to get into debt. So shifting them, especially when they're business owners, shifting them to the perspective of now is a way you can use debt, but good debt.
Well, this is like we're saying too, like you just said, it's a mindset, right? You talked about the employee and you talk about the entrepreneur, and a lot of people that we work with are side hustlers or people that have an employee mindset and see all of these things as expenses rather than as investments. And they don't understand the term healthy debt. It doesn't necessarily resonate with them because that's not the way their world has worked up until this point. And, and listen, you come more from a line of entrepreneurs, and it's interesting. Like my father was the first college graduate in his family, yet his father had a grocery store, was an entrepreneur, right? And my grandmother went and got a job because she did not want to be an entrepreneur. But my grandfather was an entrepreneur after working very laboriously on concrete and construction, with an 8th grade education. But he became an entrepreneur and he had a successful business. And what was interesting is he struggled. And that's what encouraged my father to go and get his degrees, because in my grandfather's mind, degrees led people to better ways of living. Whereas being an entrepreneur, because I don't know if he did it necessarily the right way or the best way, but he died when I was 2 months old, so I have no idea. But it's interesting to see what happened. One of my uncles became an entrepreneur, and the other ones, they just worked for other people. And it was very interesting to see who struggled and who didn't struggle. And my uncle, who was an entrepreneur, didn't really struggle. But my dad, who had a degree in education and had a job, continued to struggle to earn money. And that's what framed my whole framework around all of this. Yeah. And, I see debt and now I've changed my mindset around, I don't see debt as a bad thing if it's good debt. If it's bad debt, obviously it's not good, but I've really reshaped that. But I think so many people shifting from that employee to an entrepreneur mindset struggle with this concept very much.
Well, it comes back to risk and stress. Okay. So, and it's on both sides, the good and the bad debt. Okay. So when people have really bad debt, okay, there's risk, and it's like, all right, the risk is if I take money I have and invest it somewhere else that'll make me the money to pay for the thing, there's risk it may not work. Okay. Right. So if I just borrow it from the bank and I make my payments, okay. There's stress, right? There's stress of like, okay, I got a raise at work and now I can afford this extra payment. Okay. But if I took that money and invested it in something, I can afford the payment. But what if it goes south and the payment is bigger, or I don't have income to generate this? On a business side, it's the same thing. It's stress and risk. The stress usually is there's such a big opportunity in front of me and I don't have other people's money, debt, that I can use to go deploy here to take advantage of this opportunity. Okay. There's risk of like, holy cow, if I don't hurry up and do this thing, someone else is going to do it, or it'll take me longer to build my business. Now that, and it goes opposite directions on each side.
Right.
Okay. On each side, that stress and risk can be positive. Okay. It can be negative or positive. So the way you approach money, no matter what you're doing, has to align more with the reality of the situation and what it can do for you instead of what you have to do for it.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the stress part, when you're dealing with this, is you have to learn to deal with a whole new level of stress. Okay, because especially in business, because now you've taken on a debt, you're going to deploy it that you hope that will generate enough money to pay the thing back.
Right.
Okay, so the stress is like, wow, I really have to make sure this thing works. Okay, so it can pay that debt back.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens to good business owners is they learn to deal with this stress level to the point where it just becomes a normal thing that they do. Of course, I use debt. And that's why some of them are like, yeah, of course, I have more debt than I do actual money in the bank. Like, you really? You do? Yeah, well, the revenue that's generated services debt and puts more money in my bank. And they're like, how does that work? They're all confused. How does that work?
Right.
Well, we'll get there. But it's normal to them. When they say it, it's so like nonchalant. Like, yeah, of course I have debt. Well, the reason they can say it like that is because the first time they did it, super stressful. They were freaked out because they were changing what their mindset was about money. And when it worked and they got it to work in one way, shape, or form, or even if it didn't work, but they still figured out how to service it and get through it, it became kind of normal. Like, oh, this is what we do here.
Right.
Okay, this is just what we do. And when you normalize that kind of stress and it's just what you do, then you have the ability to grow. That's really where you have the ability to move forward and do things because you're at a level that other people aren't.
Right.
You're at a level of dealing with stress that would break most people. Right. And they would be like, I don't want that.
Right. Exactly. And we know people like that because they don't know how to handle the stress of that. Right. And that's a key point. Like, you need the tools to be able to understand that this is good and that this is going to work for you, not against you. And when you frame it in that way, and you can reduce the stress because it becomes just part of it every day. This is what we just do. Right? And I think that's the thing that people, right? It works both ways. If you have an approach to handling the stress of the debt, you'll be fine. If you constantly look at the stress of not having money, then you're not going to be fine. And you're only going to continue in that stress in a very negative way. It's just a further downward spiral that you're going to wind up going.
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, money is gasoline. Okay. That's it. It's just, it allows you to fuel something else. What the problem is, most people are thinking like, I have to make the money to buy the fuel. And it's like this reverse engineering that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, I have to, in order to get fuel, I have to dig an oil well. Like, you don't. They make it already.
Yep.
Except instead of you owning it in your backyard, you got to pay a little bit for that. And then you get to use it to drive your car.
Right.
Or go much faster or go much further.
Right.
So that's really how it has to be looked at. But you gotta not chase things, right? And that's what I was trying to go out before with this vacation. It's like you chase the vacation, then you chase the work, then you chase the work so you can chase the vacation. It's like you never actually get to do the thing. And they're both stressful situations. Going to work is stressful.
Right.
Going on vacation is stressful. When you're on vacation, like, I don't know if I should get the steak or the cheeseburger. And like, it's like, no. We don't have to worry about that because we've already done other things.
Right. That's why I like the all inclusive because you don't worry about it. You've already paid for it. That's
so use that as an example. There's people that are sitting there trying to calculate, is the all inclusive, or if I just buy items a la carte, which one will I save money on and which one will I do? And then like, they make the decision, okay, we're just going to go a la carte. And then when they're on the vacation, every single decision is about how much does this cost versus that cost and how much is that. And it's like, if they would have just said, we have a budget for this is what we spend, and then they just spend it, it's like, okay, but they're trying to like optimize everything. They're optimizing it in reverse.
Exactly.
Right? Yep. So it's just that it's a barrier for most people. And typically, if you're listening to this and you have a business, when you hit that $300,000 mark, that's kind of it. That's your ceiling. If you don't know how to leverage debt, that's all you're going to get to. And it's because you're a control freak.
Right.
And you don't want other people to do things. But the reason you don't want other people to do things is because you're worried you'll lose money. That's what it really comes to, is you're like, I can't hire someone else to do this because they're not going to do it as good as me and I won't make as much money.
Right.
Right. And that's the whole problem. So you'll see there's so many entrepreneurs. Why do you think if you're 1% in America, if you're in the 1% top percentile of income generators, it's like $450,000 or more?
Right.
Because that 300,000 yeah, many people can get there, whether it's a job or creating a business. But to go beyond that, it's going to take tools.
Mm-hmm.
Those tools are products, services, people, and money.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to need to do that. You're going to need to really understand how to do it. But if you approach it if you go in and you start leveraging that and you approach it with the wrong mindset, you will mess it up too.
Exactly. And, just to close this out, I think if you're listening to this and you struggle with this, one of the things that I would challenge you to do, and this is where I really work with people on their limiting beliefs, is, the way you look at money could be a very big limiting belief. It could stop you from doing the things that you want to do. It could prevent you from really living your fullest life. And what I would challenge you to do is to really just think about, where does that belief around money come from, and understand it. And if it's a place where you see money as a non-tool, then we need to work on a way for you to wrap your head around that it is a tool that works for you. And I would encourage you to form a new belief. Decide what you really want to believe about money. Because once you build a different relationship with the money, you'll be amazed at what happens and what flows in and what results once you've shifted that way. And it does alleviate a lot of anxiety and stress and worry that you once had over worrying about, am I going to have enough money, versus when you see, oh, money is going to work for me and it's something that I'm going to get more of. So just reframe your beliefs around that and try to challenge yourself to think differently if you struggle with that lack mindset around this, right? Because it really is a lack mindset. If you have more an abundant mindset around this, you see money as a tool and that it's always going to work for you. And you see debt as something that is healthy for you and something that can be very productive to help you make more money. So that's all I have to say about that, Adam.
Well, I would say no matter what you do with debt, go work with a professional, right? Work with your accountant, work with a financial advisor, work with an attorney, get a coach. No matter what you're going to, don't just jump into it without knowledge. And, YouTube and Google, they can give you answers, but are they the answers you need? So work with professionals, don't feel stupid asking questions. Go talk to them. Or go talk to people who have done it before. I'm sure you know somebody in your circle who has leveraged that. Ask them how they did it. Ask them how they felt about it. But don't do it all alone. We're certainly not here telling you to go out and get debt.
Right.
But it is a great tool to use to make your dreams come true and to build these things that you want to build, whether you're an employee or a business owner. So thanks.
All right. See you next time.